How secure are you for your future? This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Morore. At Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us. They come and educate us on a subject. And always, we have great guests who come and join us. And today, we have a great guest who is going to be here with us shortly to tell us about securing our future. Her name is Scherrie Prince. And before she comes, I would request you to please share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question about securing your future, ask. We will do our level best to answer it. Or if you have any comment that you want to make in regard to this episode or the entire podcast, we appreciate feedback. So thank you in advance. Whether you're watching this live or the recorded version of this episode, we appreciate you. And now, without taking one more minute, I'm going to ask you to please join me as we go together to meet our guest today, Scherrie Prince. Here we go. Hi, Sherry.
Good morning, Anthony.
Good morning. Welcome to Now Tell Us.
Well, look, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, where in the world are you? Just curious always.
I am hailing from the beautiful metropolis of Flowood, Mississippi.
Wow, that's beautiful. And how's the weather there? Is it shining bright? Is it cold?
It's just like I like it. It's about 80 plus degrees, which is not
Mhm.
too hot and not too cold. So I really enjoy this time of the year.
That's the best time. Either when it's fall or whether it's spring, that's my best time also. When it's just there in the middle.
And I think
So
you're in Greece, correct?
yeah, I'm in Greece and we also have fall and summer. It's in the evening now, but I said good morning anyway. It's good evening for me.
Yes, look, it's morning time here.
Yeah, it's evening. It's just about going to 6 shortly. And this is the part of technology we can connect from all over the world and talk about things that we are in common, or even find out things that we may not be having in common to get educated, to get insights from different parts of the world.
Well, yes, and definitely, I love to talk about asset protection.
And that's
Um,
good.
yeah, our topic today is securing your assets, and we're just giving tips for entrepreneurs.
That's beautiful, and we would love to hear that. And taking into consideration that we are in different parts of the world, I believe that whatever it is that we are going to talk about here is going to be common to every part of the world. Or otherwise, because I have so many people who are listening from the States, you can just share the details from the States. But before we go deeper into that, let's know who exactly is Sherry.
Okay, well, you know what? It's going to depend on who you ask.
Oh.
Um, started out as a country girl from Louisville, Mississippi, by way of Durant, Mississippi,
Mm,
and I grew up for part of my life on a farm. I did not always value estate planning and asset protection. It wasn't until my grandparents died without a will or a trust, and my family had to make some tough decisions about what to do with their 150-acre plus farm.
mm,
Um, I had had a full career as a real estate agent and a mortgage broker. And I guess around 30, I decided to go to law school. So if you ask, who am I? You're going to get some people that'll say I'm that country girl from Louisville, or I may be that real estate agent, or that attorney and asset protection coach. Well, I'll answer to all of those. But today, I'm educating people about how to protect your assets, no matter how small they are. So hopefully I can bring some value to your platform today.
yeah, and we appreciate you coming here and educating us on that. Now, how bad was it in that case where you that the case that you just told us about that drove you into this interest of this?
Well, I don't know if your family is like mine, but everyone does not always agree.
Mm,
Um, and that instance really drove rift in our family. We had to make some decisions about dividing the property. There was money from a lawsuit that needed to be divided, and then just the future use of the property. After we paid an attorney thousands of dollars to represent us, I saw that giving people access to planning and tools in advance was a lot better than on the back end trying to come in and litigate and form a plan. So I try to help people on the front end.
that's good. Now you asked, maybe you were wondering whether my family is as you are. Now I have had a lot of incidents and cases all over the world, and I it's logical that each and every one of us are different. I mean, even
Exactly.
twins come to a point of disagreement where they
They
have
do.
different choices on where to go, what to do, whom to be associated with, all those kinds of choices. And when now it comes to property, that becomes a serious, very serious matter. Even where I come from Kenya originally, and
Okay.
I have had so many cases in that regard.
So I would say the first thing is just having a plan. People kind of take that for granted. That is the first step in securing your assets. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a plan. It does not have to be complicated. It could be as simple as when I pass away, do I have a way for people to know where I want my house to go? Where do I want my car to go? Where are my bank accounts? So that is the very first step, is actually having a plan.
And is this what could be called a will, or it is different in this case?
Well, you can do it as a will, and then they have other, ways that you can do it as well. But for
Mhm.
today, we'll focus on a will and a trust because there are differences.
Mm.
Now, depending on where you are in the world, sometimes you can bypass both of those. Ooh, my eyes are watering a little bit today, Anthony. I'm excited about today's topic.
We are excited too here.
Yes, so
Mhm,
you can have a will or a trust.
mhm,
Um, I'm a strong proponent for a trust because the thing about a will is when you pass away, depending on where you are, that document is made to be public record, which means that anybody can go to the courthouse and get a copy of that document.
mm.
Um, and so, if anybody can get a copy of that document, what if there are things on there that you don't want the world to know about? So, an option is a trust. And there are so many different types of trust. Hopefully, you'll invite me back one day and we can talk specifically about the different types of trust.
Mhm.
If you start with a will or a trust, that is one way to get started with your plan.
Yeah, but basically, if I we can have a big picture of what a trust is. Now we've heard about the wheels. So I mean, personally, I've heard about the wheels for quite a bit of time. But trust in the event of death, give us a big picture even before we go some time in the future into the details.
Okay, so if you have a trust, when you pass away, if you are the trustee for the trust, and all a trustee is the person that administers the trust.
Hmm.
So if you are the trustee, hopefully you've done a good job with the planning and you've named a successor trustee or just somebody to pick the torch up when you pass away to run the trust for you. Generally, what I do when I'm advising people, we have an initial trustee who's generally that the person, the grantor, the settler. That's the person who set the trust up. And so we're not going to use the big fancy words, but the person who set the trust up is normally the initial trustee unless there are other options. And I advise people to go ahead and name two other people to be the trustee if something were to happen to that person. So if you are the initial trustee and you pass away, then you should have two backups to serve if something happens to you. So really all your loved ones have to do in the event that you pass is really, celebrate your life. We're not going to say have a funeral. We're going to say have a celebration of life. You don't have to worry about the legalities because hopefully, as part of your planning, you've put everything together in your trust, and there's really nothing to do with your property because the trust already outlines what'll happen in the event of your death.
Okay. And I'm trying to imagine now, because when someone passes, the will is going to be available publicly, and you said the trust is different. So generally, where is the trust and who keeps the trust?
Well, I like to say that your trust is your super secret document, and that's something that the world does not see. I suggest that you put it somewhere that's safe. Your professional should know where that trust is. That means if you have an accountant, an attorney, if you have a financial advisor, maybe your insurance agent, and all of those documents should be kept in a safe place. A lot of people default to a safe deposit box. But the thing about a safe deposit box, if you are the only person who has access to the box, your family has to go to court to get a court order to open the box. So definitely keep it in a safe, dry place, a fire resistant location, but it does not have to be a safe deposit box. If you choose a safe deposit box, make sure that you have an alternate who has access to the box in the event of your death, just to save some time and confusion about what your final wishes are.
Okay. So there's no legal entry in the trust. Like, do I have to have an attorney or when I'm
Well, you
drafting?
you technically do not have to have an attorney, but I would like to recommend an attorney. Now, Anthony, if you start having chest pains, are you going to take care of that yourself, or are you going to a doctor?
I'll go to the doctor.
Right. You want somebody who specializes in the type of issue that you're having. So if
Hmm.
it's your chest, you may think it's your heart. You're going to a cardiologist. If you are talking about estate planning, you need to go to a licensed professional, a licensed attorney who specializes in estate planning. Don't go to a medical malpractice doctor. Don't go to a personal injury doctor. You want to make sure that you get the type of advice. Now, you can set it up by yourself, but it's just not recommended. With a will, in most states, you do have to have an attorney to take that to the court on your behalf and represent you. So now you've spent X amount of dollars to draft this last will and testament. Now you possibly have to pay several thousand more to make sure that the world knows what your final wishes are. As an alternative, a trust may be a little bit more expensive up front, depending on the type of trust that you have, but ongoing, it may be less expensive, it may give you privacy. And this is one thing for entrepreneurs as well. What about anonymity? You know, you may have interest in a business or property, and you may not want the world to know that it's you individually. So,
Hmm.
trusts are also a very good option for anonymity.
Okay. I think I'm trying to understand it. And yeah, so maybe you can go through the steps of how it all comes and give us the more tips that you can share with us about doing this.
Well, let me do this because I find this works a lot better. Can I give you some of my horror stories? Because
Huh?
when I tell, no, seriously, when I tell people about all the crazy stuff that I encounter in my practice, it's like, wow, I didn't think of that. Okay. And I'm not going to call it horror stories, but the different types of scenarios that I've
Hmm.
seen play out since I've been working with this practice. One is if you are a blended family, there is really an extra level of care and support that you need to attach to your planning if you are a blended family. So, say for instance, you have two adults that have adult children, a husband and wife with adult children, and they marry. They may or may not have children together. Well, one thing that I do, I encourage people once a year, just like you have your annual medical visit, do an annual visit with your attorney to look over your trust. Because you know what happens in a year? People die.
Hmm.
People, you get grandkids. You get, children that age out of your insurance plan. There are a lot of things that happen in a year. So, especially if you are a blended family. I had one couple come to me and I did their initial estate plan. They both had been in previous marriages. He had been married 3 times. She had been married twice. So she is his fourth wife. She is his third husband.
Mm.
They both, well, she found out when he passed away that he still had insurance in wife number one's name. And one thing to consider is that if you're married for a certain period of time, there may be certain things that you are entitled to as a spouse.
Mm.
So when he passed away, it was a mess. We did some initial planning for them together, but there were still some things that he just had not thought about when we did our intake. So she had to divide some of what she thought would be her estate with other wives. And there were things, ex wives, and there were things that passed outside of probate, like insurance. Insurance does not. It does not go through your estate. It goes outside of your estate. So there were lots of things that were jointly titled that he had just forgotten about. So these are questions that you need to ask if you are entering into a marriage with someone who's been previously married before. What
Okay.
what do you think?
That's a tough one. Line
Well,
of people that are entitled to whatever it is that is going to be divided at some point. That's a tough one.
another thing is with divorce on the rise, some people are opting to cohabitate without getting married. And
Mm,
so that's a personal decision. Well, what happens when you start buying assets together? And when I say assets, I mean cars, houses, when you start sharing bank accounts. What happens when you purchase a home and you decide you no longer want to be together? Okay, it gets kind of tricky
mm-hmm,
because it's not like with a divorce and there's a court order that says who keeps the house and who has to move out. It's a little bit different. And, now your credit is tied with this person's credit.
mm-hmm,
One thing to consider, so one person may move out and they may just stop paying the bill, but the mortgage for that property was contingent on two incomes. So now it's hurting both of your credit.
mm-hmm,
So those are some things to think about as well. If you decide to cohabitate and purchase assets, or even if you are in a business relationship with someone and you're using your personal name and not an entity, these are things to think about. Because if you get a judgment against you, if somebody takes you to court and they win a judgment, it's going to attach to all of your property that's in your name personally. So I would have to pay off your judgment just to sell the house that we bought together. And you're not my husband. I'm not your wife. So those are just two examples of how it's really important to kind of think these things through. Some people use prenups or postnups as part of an estate plan. And
mm.
people don't really think about that as an estate plan, but it definitely is part of your estate plan.
Oh, okay. So, in this scenario that you describe of people who have been cohabiting and they come to that point, now, how do I, if we decide to cohabit and because we can expect anything there in the future, is here where we come together and decide this is what is going to happen in case we separate or something like that? Or what do you, how do you go about this?
Well, it's always great to have a written agreement.
Mm,
There's nothing like a good contract. I love a good contract. So, the example that I gave you before was about purchasing a house together.
mm-hmm,
Um, you know, there's different types of law to consider because most states look at real estate law if you're trying to decide, who gets the house. It's going to be where the house is located, or if you're having some sort of dispute about the home.
mm-hmm.
But also consider if you have a lease. So, what happens if you're not trying to purchase a home, but you're cohabitating and you have a lease together? Now you both have what's called a leasehold interest. And so that is something to consider as well. So I would like to recommend to anyone getting a contract and usually dating the contract out far enough so that people don't feel like they're being rushed to sign it. One way that some people try to invalidate prenups is by saying, I didn't have enough time to think about it or to read it or to let an attorney see it. So I like to recommend a good cushiony 6 months. Whatever agreement that you're going to enter into, whether it be getting an apartment, buying a house, let the agreement be 6 months before you make the decision. Also, you may want to consider if you're talking about a lease, there's a third person or entity. Of course, there's an agreement between the two of you if things go sour, but you also have a separate agreement with the person that you're leasing from. So always consider that third person who may or may not need to be part of the agreement that you have about the asset that you're trying to protect.
Okay, okay. Now, we are here and different parts of the world, and you are one who has an experience with this. How do you work with people? Do you assist people in going about this? Because even the match that we have covered here still sounds a bit challenging for someone to go about it by himself or herself. How do you work? Do you work with people all over?
I do. And, it's true that it really does take a village, not just to raise children, but to do anything in life.
Mm,
Um, I believe that living is just part of having community. And I'm not talking about the people who live down the street. Your community can be anyone who has, similar goals. So I work with people in a couple different ways.
mm-hmm,
Um, I am a licensed attorney in the state of Mississippi. So I can work with you in that way in Mississippi, but I also coach people.
mm-hmm.
So I do group coaching, and I have a digital course that I'm launching in January 2024. And like all the questions that you're asking me here are going to be found inside of that course. It's a very general course. It's called the Entrepreneur's Estate Plan. And I lay out all these scenarios and I tell you how to navigate those and give you several different options because there's no one right way to do anything. So, with that, you get different options and you can actually finish it in a weekend. So, if you got a couple hours on a weekend and you just want some basic questions answered, you want some tools, you want some forms, you can get those. And so, I know you'll be giving out my website. I'm going to be doing a webinar on it in December. And if you like what you hear, you can, look at getting the course. And like I said, in a weekend, you can have a blueprint for an estate plan, no matter where you are in the world.
Okay, no matter where you are in the world.
World.
Yeah, we have your website here, and we'll ask people to just go check it out and they can register there. So the website is www.sherrieprince.com. It is attached in the show notes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, which in your career, which has been one of the most challenging things that you've come across?
So challenging. I don't like to think about it as challenging. I like to think about opportunities. I help people solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most interesting opportunities, I would say, that I've come across um, would be the helping somebody unwind their relationship. So I do a number of divorces in my practice. And I usually only do those for people that I've done their estate plan for. Some people, also help me with that. Um, but anytime that I put together an estate plan for you and now you're coming back and you've decided that you no longer want to be together, and we're trying to find a fair and equitable way to execute the things that you've outlined in your estate plan. Doesn't always go as smoothly. And so sometimes you get challenged because when you're putting the plan together, ideally, both sides have representation. And it's always easy to make a plan when you're the most in love. So, when you first meet Jane Doe and you're lovey dovey, that is the best time to make a plan when you can be fair and equitable. But now that everything is over and, Jane has moved on with the new John, you might not want to give Jane everything you agreed to when you started out. So, that is one of the saddest things that I deal with from a law practice side. But from a coaching standpoint, because I do coaching, internationally, is when people just don't implement. I try to give folks small, actionable things to do to keep their estate plan moving. And so, part of my coaching program, we give a whole lot of free information. So, we have a Facebook group. Every Monday, I'm in there giving out free information. I do free trainings. And each time you walk away, you have one thing, at least one thing, that you can implement right away. For my paid coaching opportunities, we actually put you on a trajectory for success. So we show you how to ask attorneys, accountants, you know, asking the questions that you need answered to help move your plan further and to protect your assets. And so I guess one of the most challenging things is just kind of watching people who have access to the information but don't execute on it.
People who have excess information, they don't implement, they don't act on it. Now, that's interesting. And I love how you describe that you see opportunities, is not the challenges. I love that. And now, when we are in contact with people who are having those information and not implementing, what are the opportunities right there? Just just asking.
Well, one, always reset. Because, and then share and educate. When you're in the settlement phase and you're just simply, talking about, well, let's get this done, we agreed to this in advance. I try to educate the people that I'm working with on the options. One, on the expense that, you may have to go through to take this to a court or to some other mediation, and also on the time frame, because time is always of the essence. If you are at a point to where you're ready to move on and close one chapter of your life, we talk about time. So giving people all of their options. Also, one of my favorite things to talk to people about is the cost of inaction.
The cost of an action.
The cost of inaction. What does it cost you to do nothing? Some people think,
Okay.
is zero, but it's not zero, because what opportunities are you missing out on because you have not done anything, you know. And so that's one thing that I love to share with people as well. I'll show them where they are, that day, and where they could be if they just would take action.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because there could be someone who's listening there and is just not decided and is not thinking about what we are talking about because they are living and they don't know about. I mean, they don't care about tomorrow. How do we convince them to just start thinking about this?
Well, like I said, a lot of it is mindset. And just letting people know, you may not have to start with an attorney today or an accountant, but what if you just sat down and made a decision? I'm going to make a plan for what to do with all my stuff. I'm not going to call it assets. What am I going to do with my stuff when I'm gone, when I'm not here?
Mm,
And there are some things that you can do that have nominal fees. Like there are some states, if you just have a house and a car, there are some states you can draft a deed to transfer your property. So as soon as you pass away, it goes to the person that you designate.
mm-hmm,
The cost to do that is whoever, types it up for you. They have some forms, you can type it up yourself, and a filing fee. Where I live, the filing fee is about $26. So for $26, you have put together an estate plan for your house. Do you
mm,
see how simple that was? And
yeah.
all it took you was just making a decision to do it. There are some states with your car when you pass away. There's just a form that you fill out. I think that fee is $10 where I live. And your heirs fill the form out and the car is transferred. No attorneys, no courts, no trust. So even if you have a small amount of assets, talk with someone in your family who knows where all your stuff is. And by stuff, insurance policies, bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, and just have some sort of plan, because it really can give your family a lot of comfort when you're no longer with us.
And who exactly should be doing this? I'm asking because who do you, and this is going back to the point where we are trying to convince people to just do it. Who should be doing it?
Everybody.
Hmm.
Um, because do you realize we have 12-year-olds who are multimillionaires because of YouTube videos? It used to just be that people that were old enough to work, but everybody needs to consider this, because you have minors, people that are under 18 or 21, depending on where you live, who actually have assets. They have money.
Hmm.
So that needs to be considered. And now they have NIL deals, name, image, likeness. So you have college students who are getting multi-million dollar and $100,000 contracts for the use of their name, their image, or their likeness. So, one thing that is often overlooked is intellectual property. And that's all NIL deals are, intellectual property. You're
Hmm.
allowing somebody to use your name, image, and likeness. You're licensing your intellectual property. So that is an asset. So Anthony, I'm gonna ask you a question. If
Yeah.
there was if there was one thing that you can own, if your estate could consist of one thing, and it would make you millions or billions of dollars, what would that be?
One thing that I can learn. Right now, I'll mention maybe something, and maybe this is something that maybe we can use it as a case study. I would like to own my hashtag.
Okay, I like it. Do you know what my one thing would be?
What would that be?
My one thing would be all of the intellectual property rights to the Air Jordan logo.
Mm-hmm.
Do you realize how much money Michael Jordan makes just from that one asset? And he owns he owns real estate. He owns interest in several businesses. But the large portion of his money comes from the apparel and the deal that he has for his shoes. So I could be a billionaire with that one asset. But what if I overlooked that? What if I owned a restaurant or a company, in the middle of a town that people loved, that may be a franchise? That has value.
Mm, that would be now you're
Yeah.
value. Yeah, yeah. So and now since you asked me that question, I would also like to ask now. Suppose I want to just take a hashtag and protect it, and how would that how would a protect the protection of a hashtag, is it possible? And if it's possible, how is the cost? How does someone go about it?
Well, I will say this. All things are possible, but some things are unlikely.
Okay.
Um, certain things are what's called public domain. And so, depending on what it is you're trying to protect, it may be considered public domain and you may be unable to protect it. But
Okay.
I tell folks, if you have intellectual property, if you have a physical product, if you own a brick and mortar business, look at whatever trademark protections, copyright protections. I would explore everything. And depending on the type of business that you have, you may need multiple types of trademark. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's IP protections. Your restaurant can have trademarks, copyrights, and everything. So you really want to explore that. And once again, I'm not going to a heart doctor if my foot hurts. I would recommend someone who specializes in intellectual property law because when you start talking about protecting that type of thing, you really want somebody who specializes in that.
Yeah.
So,
And asking this because you may have an idea, even though you're not in that area. With intellectual property, if I file an intellectual property in the US, can I do it from elsewhere in the world? And is my that filing going to cover any other part in the world, or does things done in the US only work in the US?
okay, I'm so glad you asked that because I'm talking about Michael Jordan again. So, you need to file in different parts of the world. Early on, when he first got his shoe deal, he was all, buttoned up in the United States in terms of intellectual property. But somebody registered his intellectual property overseas. And after years, he was able to sort that out. But just look at how much time it took. I don't know if you recall when President Trump was in office,
Mm-hmm.
you know, his family made several filings over in China for different things, and they do it quite often. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of business owners do that anyway, but I guess because he was the president, there was a certain light that was shined on what his family was doing. But yes, you need to file for protections globally. Just because you do it in the United States does not mean that you're protected in other areas. Every area does not mirror the law in the United States.
Mm, okay, that's good to know. So that when I start to register my trademark or my hashtag or whatever it is that someone who's listening could be thinking of, we can always know how to go about it.
They better not mess with you, Anthony. I'm gonna get them.
Uh-huh.
If they mess with you, I'm gonna get them, Anthony. So
You're gonna get them. You're gonna get them. Yeah, that's very good of you. And yes, we are almost coming to the end of this episode, and we are really grateful for you coming here and sharing with us some tips of protecting, securing our future. Thank you very much, Sherry.
well, thank you for having me. And even though we're primarily talking about entrepreneurs who are in business, a lot of these can apply to individuals who don't have a business.
Hmm.
Um, so thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you too. And We also thank all those people who have been here with us, or those who have been watching or listening, and even those who get to do so after we are through with this. We thank you for taking your time, and yeah, let's secure our future. Before we go, leave us a few words that we should always remember. What are they?
Always remember to play big faster. That means don't wait until tomorrow. Do it today. Take action.
Yeah, take action today, play bigger, faster. So I should be thinking, start thinking of the millions and billions that my trademark could be bringing in the future and take an action now.
Yeah, start today with baby steps. If you do one thing every single day to move forward, you're making progress. So start today.
Okay. Yeah, this goes out there to each and every one of you. Start today with baby steps. That comes from Sherry Prince. Thank you. That's about it. Thank you, Sherry, once again.
Thank you.
And bye for now.
Bye for now.
This has been Now Tell Us. I've been your host, Anthony Muirode, and together with our guest today, Sherry Prince, we're saying secure your future. Bye.